All right. So my name is Malika Pyarali. I'm the Communications, Advocacy, and Digital Engagement Associate at the Youth Café, and it is my privilege to be your host for today's event. Let me take this opportunity to welcome everyone and express our gratitude to all of you for being here and for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for today. Let us have a look at what we will be discussing today. Please go to the next slide. Okay, so our agenda for today's forum is we'll first start with introductions, then we'll have an overview of what the Nairobi City County Youth Policy is, and then we'll have a discussion and a feedback session, and lastly, a Q&A. So let's get right into it. To begin with, let's have a look at our ground rules for a brave space. Okay, so our goal for this discussion is to have a positive and welcoming space for everyone to learn. And for yourself, we need to be aware that we are all imperfect learners. We need to be open to learning and be present and actively engage. We need to avoid distractions. We need to engage thoughtfully. And most of all, we need to have fun. For others, we need to keep in mind that this is a brave space. We need to listen actively. We need to lean in and lean back. Respect and remember that the people we're interacting with are people, and teach and learn with kindness and do what feels comfortable for you. You could use the video, chat, audio, whatever is comfortable for you to interact with us when called upon. So since this is a discussion, we would like to get to know you all a little better. In your name, your county, or your ward of origin, the organization that you're affiliated with, if any, and title, if any, and what book are you currently reading, or a movie that you're watching or have watched which you found interesting, or a song that you're jamming to. So leave a comment down in our chat box, and I'd like to request Leah, could you please come in and on the mic and read the names of the people who have introduced themselves. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Malika. Let's all begin introducing ourselves through the chat box.
We just keep writing on the chat box. We're so happy to see you all. So let me give you a brief introduction to the work we do at the Youth Café. The Youth Café is a not-for-profit Pan-African youth-led. Its headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. Since its founding in 2012, the Youth Café has been working with young men and women in Kenya and around Africa to advance youth-led approaches towards achieving sustainable development, social equity, innovative solutions, community resilience, and transformative change. Till today, we have reached over 1.6 million young men and women with our projects and attracted major partners such as USAID Foundation, Google, International Challenge Fund, etc. And while active on a number of cross-cutting issues, the Youth Café works mainly in 8 priority areas to which we bring a multidisciplinary and multi-perspective approach. These are peace and security, which includes practical inclusion, with the aspects of remittances and accountability, culture, arts and sports, education and skills, business, job creation and entrepreneurship, universal health coverage, environmental preservation, and climate change. The 8 pillars of the Youth Café provide an essential organizing structure for the development and implementation of our various programs and initiatives, which all play a critical role in reducing youth deprivation and socio-economic and political empowerment of young people in the continent. The Youth Café works with marginalized sections of youth, such as youth living with disability, youth living in informal settlements, young women and girls, minority youth, indigenous youth, among others. We have a global reach in 72 countries, with our reach in all the 47 counties in Kenya and 22 countries in Africa. We work with over 2,000 volunteers and 8,500 interns and are able to reach and engage with the youth and marginalized thematic areas through the diverse and individual organizational partnerships that we have. I'll take this opportunity to welcome one of the directors of Youth Affairs of Nairobi City County, Mr. Wainaina Muiruri, who will give us a background of the Nairobi Youth City County Youth Affairs Department and what they do and the key objectives for the youth policy. Mr. Wainaina, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Malika, and good afternoon, I think, to everyone who is in this meeting. A brief background of this, why we are here. The Nairobi City County has a sector that deals with the issues of youth. So a sector basically is something equivalent to a ministry in the national government. And the name of the sector is quite long, but the name is education, gender, social services, youth and sports. And that sector is headed by a county executive committee member, otherwise referred to as a minister in the county government. Then under that minister, we have two chief officers. We have a chief officer in charge of education, social services, and gender. Then we have a chief officer in charge of youth and sports, and that's where we fall under. Then below the chief officer, then we have the Department of Youth Affairs, where myself and Susan are actually based at. So the policy, how we came up with the idea of having a policy at the county government, we were responding to a motion by one of the members of the county assembly who requested the executive, which I'm part of, to develop a youth policy, a county youth policy. And we picked it up from there. And this conversation has been started way back in 2018, but it's only up to this year that's when we actually kickstarted the process itself. And we have a process that we have identified with a few partners that we had engaged initially in terms of how we want to go with the process. So the first part of that process was to set up a working group, which will assist in coordination of this process. We had developed, I didn't mention that, we had developed a draft county youth policy sometime back in 2018. And that's what the technical working group reviewed in the initial stage. Later on, we had an engagement with the CEC, the minister, as I had mentioned, of who is in charge of youth affairs and among other areas. And we had a process where we also engaged her on what the policy draft entails and what has been captured in that policy. Then later on, we've had public participation, specifically targeting young people, which we started 3 weeks ago. And this is part of actually that process. So we've had a couple of physical forums targeting young people in different areas in Nairobi. And we are grateful for Youth Café for also organizing this forum, this virtual forum, so that we can also get inputs from young people and other stakeholders on the draft policy that we have. We intend, once we're done with the forums, we intend to also engage a few stakeholders, a few actors who are also key in this process. Then we will be having validation meeting at some point in time. We also have a validation meeting just to ensure that all these input we've got from youth forums, whether physical or virtual, and even the stakeholders, will be harmonized, and we can also improve on the draft that we already have. Then part of that process will also entail us having an engagement with the county executive committee. So basically, the county executive committee is composed of the different ministers in the county government heading different sectors. So we have sectors that deal with issues of health. We have a sector that is dealing with issues of agriculture, ICT, trade, environment, and so on and so forth. So we will have an engagement with those 10. There are 10 of them, executive committee members. And they'll also share their input on that policy. And then finally, we hope to, not hope actually, we plan to engage the members of the county assembly. There's a specific group that it's called the Youth Caucus. So it's mainly composed of MCAs or members of the county assembly who are nominated. Actually, some of them are nominated and some are elected, but who represent youth within the county assembly. And our hope is that once we've finalized on that process, the assembly will now approve what we'll have come up with. So that's a brief of the process and a bit on the background of where we started and where we are. So the county government has, I think, and this probably affects quite a number of county governments. Before devolution, youth issues were not, I would say, were not really taken seriously by county governments, and I think that's why a few or a number of county governments have decided to develop county youth policies. At least I know of Makueni. I think Machakos is something they're working on. So I think a number of county governments are developing youth policies for the county government. And this one is the reason why I think this is being done is also so that we can the county governments themselves can now know in terms of programming and projects in terms of what needs to be implemented within their respective counties. And that's why this process, the public participation forums are really important, because then we get inputs from young people and from key stakeholders on what areas they feel are priority areas for them in their respective county, in this case for Nairobi. And we are also hoping within this policy to have we don't have a fully fledged department of youth affairs in the county. So we are hoping this policy will also give us that framework where we can now have a fully fledged department of youth in the county government. And more importantly, the policy will also give us a guide or some sort of leverage in terms of resource allocation within the county government. So in a nutshell, I think that's the background I would want to give for now. But I think as we move on, we can get questions and we will respond to them as we proceed. So thank you, Malika.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wainaina. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Since we have such a notable speaker with us, please feel free to type your questions to him on the chat, and we will be sure to relay them over and help give him an opportunity to answer whenever possible. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So as Mr. Wainaina very aptly put it, the Youth Engagement Forum seeks to provide an opportunity for for you as young people to be a major stakeholder for the policy and share your views and comments to inform the final draft of the document. And so on that note, let's move on to the discussions, and we will be asking a few questions, and please feel free to write your responses or questions on the chat and just give us some of your input. So the first question that we want to be focusing on are, what are the challenges that the youth face when it comes to education, labor, which is in terms of employment and entrepreneurship, health, be it reproductive or mental health, social issues, including drug abuse, sexual and gender-based violence, and crime, and arts and sports. Please feel free to write your responses on the chat. We can see you. We'll have someone from the Youth Cafe be reading your chats and voicing them out. Please give us your input. Oh, there we go. Yes. Hello, Harrison. Please mute yourself and let us know what you're thinking.
Okay, thanks. The challenges that usually face regarding the education on the youth, we can see some like financial and some people like gender discrimination, because on some community or tribe, they usually don't want like ladies to be educated.
Yes, that's very true. Sometimes, oftentimes we see that whenever it comes to a choice between either the male child or the female child, parents are more inclined to educate the male child. So thank you for your input. That's right. I can see some comments on the chat. So Bernice says that on the aspect of education, my view is that most youth are uneducated due to the lack of finances needed to propel their education. Yes, that's very true as well. School fees getting very expensive, and quality education is hard to come by with the lack of finances available. Thank you for that input. Rael is saying that gender disparities, high poverty levels, and teenage pregnancies, which are all very important issues as well. Thank you for that. Kelvin says that on education, most youth are not able to get proper education because of poverty. I see a lot of poverty there. Yes, it's very true. Financial stability is very important to get opportunities as well. Thank you, Alex. I can see you. Please feel free to write your inputs on the chat again, or raise your hand and we will give the mic over to you. Just whatever's most comfortable to you guys. Yes, unemployment is also another problem we face because most of us finish school and don't get employed as we expect. Yes, there's this very weird cycle that's going on that you need experience to get employed, but you need employment to get experience, which is something that we really need to address. Thank you so much for that. Yes. Labor, which is demand and supply balance, alignment skills in the tertiary sector or institution, and CG's initiative in balancing this. Edmund, would you like to expand on that, please? Just tell us what you're thinking. Linda, on education, quality education that is provided at times does not meet the market demand, which is ever evolving. Yes, that's very true. The lack of skill development or opportunities available for people to develop themselves. Thank you. Alma says inadequate exposure in arts and sports. Yes, that's true, but would you please like to elaborate a little bit on what you mean by that, Amos? Poverty, Brian, some of the youths are not able to achieve their dreams as there is no funds to cater for this education. Yes, that's very true. As mentioned earlier in the points as well, this poverty is a big issue, and financial requirements for achieving quality education and opportunities. Those are very important points. Thank you so much. Stacy, no access to professional mental health care services. Yes, unfortunately, there's a lack of professional mental health services, and if they're available, they're very expensive. Thank you for that, Stacy. Fauzia says, with the pandemic making employment hard to get, it has heavily affected the mental health of young people. Yes, well, the last year or 2 years have brought with it unprecedented challenges, and with that comes severe mental health issues as well. So thank you. That's a very important issue as well. Calvin says, we have ideas to start good businesses, but we don't have any support from the government, and it is given to the few who have connections. Yes, that's one opinion. Thank you so much for that, Kelvin. Do we have any more people who want to jump in on the chat, or raise your hand again and we can hear you? Linda says health, destigmatize mental and reproductive health issues first. Yes, in order to address these issues, we first need to be comfortable talking about them. And we're not going to reach that stage until we start from somewhere. So yes, thank you so much, Linda. It's a very important issue as well. Yeah. Martin says education, inadequate funds to continue with learning, especially after secondary schools. Most families cannot fund higher education due to standards of living. Yes, that's very true. University education can be quite costly, and it is a real challenge for some people. Thank you so much for that, Martin. Is there anyone who wants to speak to us, who wants the mic to be handed over? We'd be happy to listen to you. All right, if there's, please feel free to keep writing your comments on the chat. We're still hearing you. And with that, we can move to the next question. There we have drug abuse. Most of the youth find themselves abusing drugs as there is no employment opportunity, which makes them idle. Yes, Brian, that is an important issue, drug abuse as well. Some people also, some youth I feel can also need drugs, resort to drugs as a way of dulling the pain of unemployment as well. So yes, that's a very important issue. Now moving on to the question to what areas do you believe that this youth development policy should consider as a priority? From the ones mentioned above or even other ones that you might want to bring in. Just tell us, what do you think that the policy should consider as a priority at this? Edmund, hello Edmund, please speak to us. Tell us what you think. What do you think the policy should consider as a priority?
Okay, hi everyone. My thinking is around the question of employment and entrepreneurship, as earlier highlighted in the previous question. It's talking about what the challenges and kind of just aligning that to now this aspect of prioritizing specific areas. I think in terms of the policy, and that actually draws down to the county government and the relevant. I'm so glad that we have got the representation here. So I'm really curious to probably just understand in terms of my earlier input was around the rate at which young people kind of just, graduate from these tertiary institutions into the market space, considering this demand and supply chain in terms of what skills are demanded in the market and what actually is supplied from these learning institutions. So looking into the current situation, I think a lot of in the development space, there is a lot of focus in terms of green jobs, the green environment, and stuff like that. So I think it will be a really good priority to, I think, go back to the institutions that we have at the county government level. I don't really understand in terms of, again, I know the county government have got different structures, maybe the Nairobi one, the tertiary institutions. So I'm talking about the VTCs or this institution that equip young people with skills could be in a different department from the one that Wainania is or the one that is taking lead in the particular policy. But again, this department kind of, work together. So talking about how do we actually, look at equipping these institutions that equip young people with skills. By the time they leave these facilities, they are really at a level that they are good to be absorbed into the market. So which programs are we coming up with at the county government level, and how do we equip in terms of the resources, in terms of the actual content that is taught in this facility? Some of these facilities, they have got curriculums from the 90s. So how do we actually, improve this, maybe the content, the curriculum, the facilitation, and actually in terms of doing some sort of analysis. So in 5 years to come, the Nairobi County will have these and these opportunities. There will be investments in the specific industries, to be in the transport or in the manufacturing. So going back now to the learning institutions to actually equip young people, by the time 5 years goes down the line, this is coming up. So some sort of labor market survey. So I'm really trying to give that prioritization in terms of how do we actually balance what we are bringing out from the learning institutions to the job market to avoid a large pool of young people graduating and not finding opportunities, basically because they don't have the skills that are needed in the market.
Yes, thank you so much, Edmund. That's very important. What I got from your input was that there's a disparity between the transition of skills from these tertiary institutions into the job market, and you had a few Mr. Wainaina would like to comment on. Sir, would you please maybe jump in and let us know what you think, or if you have any response to that question.
Okay, thank you, Malika, and I think Edmond has brought out a very important I think question, and more importantly, he's also provided proposals or recommendations on what needs to be done. And I think I will also encourage all of us, even as we identify areas or challenges or priorities that we think should be part and parcel of the policy, we can also just share our recommendations or proposals on what we believe can also be done in terms of resolving those issues. So I think so let me first of all just clarify the vocational training institutions, the former polytechnics, as we used to know them, is a devolved function. So all the polytechnics that we are aware of that were run by the national government, despite regardless of the county, now are owned by the county governments. So that's a function that is a devolved function, and we have a vocational training department. It is our sister department, and I know there are quite a number of vocational training centers already in Nairobi. I believe probably about 15 or more than that. And I agree with Edmond. I think one of the challenges is even the probably reviewing of the curriculum, probably the courses, are they marketable courses? Because I think that's one of the things that young people are really interested in. So as a young person, I'm sure a young person will be asking, if I take a certain course, will it create opportunities for me? So I think that's a valid concern. I think even in terms of equipping these vocational training centers. So I think those are things that I've also experienced, some of the centers that I've visited. But there have been a few improvements or progress. I think one of the centers that we've seen some progress is in Waithaka. Waithaka is somewhere in Dagoretti, and it was something that was supported by Safaricom. So it was a partnership. It's what we call a public-private partnership. So they supported to equip the center. They also, I think, introduced some courses within that center. So I think we'll be looking forward to probably having that replicated within the other vocational training centers. So so just to finalize, I think it's a very important concern that Edmond has raised, and I think I also want to appreciate that concern and also the proposals in terms of what can be done to rectify that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. See in the chat we have some inputs. We have the priority education should be given first priority, because without education, funds can't be handled efficiently. Illiterate people can barely make right decisions, especially in today's world where everything is digitizing. Also, with education, one can easily structure ways of monetizing, but let's train ourselves to stop getting educated to get jobs. Let's get educated. Important point. The access to quality education is also a very important point that I think is an idea for what this policy should use as a priority. Also from Nina, lack of employment is the biggest issue because lack of income sources is devastating, especially if you come from a poor background and have graduated yet you are still at home with no work because you lack experience. Yes, and in his comment as well about training sessions and things that they will, I think, take into account when sort of informing this policy. This thing of experience being compulsory should be reconsidered. The youth should be given a chance and trained to acquire the experience. Being sidelined doesn't make sense. Okay. Yes, thank you so much for your input, Nina. Okay, how about the idea of hubs could be simply like job centers, centralized youth opportunities? Yes, Edmund, thank you for that comment. There we go. Linda says, prioritize labor, engage the private sector, academic institutions, NGOs, and government in ensuring graduating youth have better prospects of getting jobs or being self-employed. Yes, again, this talks to the transition between education and employment. So yes, thank you for that comment, Linda. We're definitely taking all this into account. All right, now that we've identified some of the issues and some of the priority areas that the policy should talk to, then which youth groups should the policy target, do you think? Please write your comments again on the chat, just a reminder. Just let us know what you think. Which youth groups should this policy target most? Well, I think for the other, for the previous question, I got a comment of CRE policies, CRB clearance, police abstracts, etc. They're expensive for someone searching for a job. That's an interesting take. I think we will definitely consider that. Yes, Mr. Wainaina, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, yes, Malika. Just probably to assist us for this particular question, we in the policy we had just identified a couple of target youth groups. So probably so that the participants will also probably can let us know which probably is the priority youth group they feel. So we had the youth with disability, which we thought should be a target group. We had the youth living in streets, the street families. We had youth with health concerns. We had unemployed and underemployed youth. Then we had youth in learning institutions, youth living in informal settlements, youth in conflict situations. We had the female youth. Somebody had suggested the boy child, though it was a bit controversial because a child is not necessarily a youth, but I think we understood why there was that emphasis on the boy child. So, so those are some of the youth, target youth that we had proposed in the policy, and maybe the participants probably can share which particular segment of youth they feel is also a priority within this policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. We got a few comments in the section which says university students, both ongoing and graduated, which I think refers to youth in higher education institutions that you just mentioned. And then we have job entry category or groups, youth out of school or dropped out, etc. And of course, youth with disability could have an angle of supporting, informing groups to support them access affirmative funds and opportunities that might need group formation. Yes, thank you so much for that. I guess all youth groups are important, but we have this group of fresh graduates. Some are getting depressed because they think they have what it takes to get employed, but experience. Us who are in the university aren't yet there, but we can see what they're going through. Yes, community-based organizations around Nairobi. These groups entail large numbers of youth. The policy should target youth who have completed their education and out looking for job opportunities. We first have to create employment for those who are out there. Then the upcoming ones will be able to have a favorable environment when they are done with their education. So yes, thank you so much everyone for your input. And I think what I can get from the comments is just youth in higher education institutions, just at that transition phase between gaining the skill and translating it into the job market. Mr. Wainaina, your hand is still up. Would you like to comment further on that?
Yeah, sorry, Malika, I forgot to remove my hand, but I can just add a few comments. Yeah, so I think the feeling is that a lot of youth in the learning institutions, I think that's fine. But also, I probably will just want to also probably the feedback we'll also be looking at is because we already have we have a national youth policy. And then we have this county youth policy that we are discussing. So probably because some of this will be cross-cutting. Some of the issues will be dealt with the county and the national and also the national government. But we will really encourage if we can get like specific recommendations that the county government can do, because I think that will really help. Can really help us even as we get inputs on the county youth policy, because sometimes we if we get probably those which might seem broad, they may also fall under the scope of the national government. But for us, we will be really looking forward to the specific concerns that address young people, and specifically in Nairobi. So that was a clarification I also wanted to bring out as we continue with the discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. There's more people who have agreed with community centers because they have a great number of youth as well. Community centers around Nairobi, and also engage youth groups involved with education programs in informal settlements of Nairobi. So yeah, thank you also, Evans, for outlining what are these, 11? Yeah, around 11 different youth groups that he thinks should be prioritized here. Thank you so much for that. Linda says youth in the entertainment industry and sports sector who are positively influential and can act as ambassadors. Yes, Linda, thank you for that. There's a question for Mr. Wainaina. Are you seeking specific interventions that the policy can adopt with specific youth categories through your clarification? Mr. Wainaina, would you like to address that question?
Can you repeat the question, Malik, again?
Are you seeking specific interventions that the policy can adopt with specific youth categories through your clarification?
Sorry, so not necessarily specific interventions for those. Oh yeah, okay. Actually, I think now when I think about it, yeah, I think we if, for instance, if there's a specific intervention that can be proposed that need to be done for instance, the young people with disability, yeah, I think that that is welcome. So and I think for the other categories of youth, so I think that's we are open to those proposals. Yeah.
All right, so the next question up for discussion is, in your opinion, what are the rights and responsibilities of these three groups: the youth, the government or the county, and the private sector? What do you think are the rights and responsibilities of these three groups separately? All right, again, please write your comments on the chat. Your input is very important for the development of this policy, so please feel free to write your comments or raise your hands. This is an important question. What, in your opinion, are the rights and responsibilities of, for example, the youth? What is the rights and responsibilities of the government or the responsibility of the private sector in order to achieve the development of the Nairobi County in general? So please let us know. Oh, there we go. Otieno Evans, I can see your hand up. Please let us know what you're thinking.
Okay, I think I've changed the device. Can you hear me clearly now?
Oh, yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay, so I think a clear right for the young people is that Article 55 says that young people in Kenya have a right to participate in decision making and have a right to be included in both decision making by the government. So that participation and a right for affirmative action to protect young people. The government has a responsibility, and I don't want to call it a responsibility, but rather an obligation to make sure that young people are included and are protected, being a marginalized group. Again, you find that in Article 55, 100, and many other. For private sector, I'll say they have a responsibility in supporting youth development and generally community development. And this responsibility comes as part of CSR, citizen corporate responsibility, but also as people contributing to and benefiting from either the young people and the skills that young people provide.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that input. That's very true. Thank you so much. There's a few comments we have in the comment section that say that for fresh graduates, I think internship programs should be automatic after graduation so that we can get work experience through that and later be able to be employed. Yes, that's an interesting take on it. Thank you so much, Rael, for that. David says that it's the responsibilities of the youth to actively seek to be informed and knowledgeable of the civic matters that are happening in their communities. Yes, David, it is a responsibility of the youth to actively seek these opportunities. Thank you so much for that. Does anyone else have any input to give on the rights and responsibilities of these three groups? Linda, yes, I can see your hand up. Please let us know what you're thinking.
I think for the government, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
For the government, they should make themselves known to the youth. I mean, most of the youth, I mean, speaking from my own experience, we are not aware of the offices that exist, what they do, and how they can help us. So if they can do more on awareness creation, so that we know there's an office that exists, that it does this and that, they can do a campaign on that. It can be very helpful in, boosting the youth to be able to, have the issues addressed. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that input, Linda. Just a follow up to that. When you say make themselves more accessible, do you mean like through contact details or email availability, or just because, I mean, I'm sure there's probably, if you search for the address of these particular government offices, you can find them. So do you mean like availability or just spaces to have discussions?
Exactly. Like for those in the urban setup, yes, they can do that. It's easily accessible. But what about the youth in the village areas? They're not aware of these things. So it's good if they can, make regular announcements and such, so that the youth are aware that this office exists. You can, pop in every other time to have issues addressed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Linda, for that. Yes, it's important to have these spaces through which the youth and the people in power, just everyone to communicate. And that's how we will move forward. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we held this session today, because we wanted to get the youth input on things that matter and things that will ultimately affect them. So thank you for that, Linda. It's a very important point that you brought up. Does anyone have anything else to say? Oh, there we go. For the private sector, they can take the initiative to step in and help the youth who are mainly marginalized, such as women and the disabled. For example, financial institutions can create funds and loans with low interest, which can benefit young entrepreneurs. Yes, thank you for that. Yes, that's a very important responsibility for the private sector to have. Yes, thank you. Oh, there we go. We have another one. So for the youth, oh, thank you for being so concise. For the youth have right to access their funds and finances to run their projects. They have a responsibility to work and do what is expected of them. Stop this generalization mentality of needing easy, rich life in such short while. Yes, thank you for that. The government has a right to choose which projects to fund and which not to. Of course, after fair evaluation, government has responsibility of ensuring there is equality in handling of issues and funding of projects. And for the private sector, I know no one wants to employ labor force with no experience, but they should find measures of giving out internships and later employ. Yes, thank you so much for being so clear in the way you put your points forward. Thank you so much. Otieno says responsibility of the youth to be patriotic, contribute to socio-economic development, and protect the environment. Yes, those are very important points as well. Thank you so much for your input, you guys. Is there anyone else who wants to jump in? Yes, Mr. Wainaina, would you like to comment?
Yes, Malika, thank you. I will also be interested. I haven't seen it come from the chat, but I think we within the policy we've also talked about. We want to come up with a youth volunteerism strategy, because I believe as for young people who probably cannot get internships, cannot get attachment, cannot get employment, the issue of experience, which has been mentioned, and I think comes across a lot of times. If young people can also volunteer themselves, that in a way will also help them gain this experience. That will be important even as they seek employment or internships or something like that. So it would be good to hear what the participants' views are on the issue of volunteerism as one of the rights or probably responsibilities also for young people. Yeah.
Hi, maybe I could, I don't know.
Yes, thank you for that.
Maybe I could give input as well.
Yes, sure, please, Edmund.
Yeah, Wainaina, I think that's a nice move. But again, I think there might need to be an innovative way of packaging that. Because if you tell someone go and volunteer, people won't come. But how do you package that? Because I think from experience or from what I've seen around is the opportunities are there. Yes, we have got funds to support businesses. We have got institutions for people to learn. We have got programs that young people should actually seek. We have got these offices that are open for young people to come in and seek information, go to youth fund, get all this. But young people are not going for them because they are packaged. The notion around youth fund is if you ask a random young person about youth fund, they will tell you, you can't get that. But there are people that have got. So I think my thinking is, how do we package that in terms of in the new policy? How are we trying to package these existing opportunities for young people to actually question and go for them or seek clarification? Because previously these things have been there, but then again, young people are not going for them because of, I don't know, myths or what they have heard, hearsay. So talking about packaging could be something around awareness creation, actually going back now to the drawing board and create positive awareness on volunteerism. We're introducing volunteerism at the Nairobi County Government, and this is what it will be about. So that way, we'll deal away with the notion that volunteerism ni kazi ya msalaba. You just go there, work for free, nothing will come, you won't be paid. That is it. But if we approach it from an angle of trying to repackage it and bringing a new picture to volunteerism, that will create a sense of trigger that this young person will see, oh, so we can actually volunteer and get this and this and this. So yeah, my thinking is these opportunities are there, but then again, we kind of just need to kind of just repackage them differently to create that newness or that new test for young people to be to question or to just really make that attempt to go for them.
Yes, thank you so much, Edmund. Your point was that we need to find a way to motivate more youth to engage in volunteering programs within their societies and within their communities. What do you all think could be an innovative way to package, as Edmund put it, these volunteering opportunities? Rael, yes, I see your hand up. Would you like to comment?
Okay, thank you so much, Malika. I would just like to add something on what Edmund has said. Yes, youth funds are there, but not all youth are able to access it. Like, for example, you can't just walk to an office and request for a youth fund. There are procedures, like, for example, you have to come with a business idea, you write a business plan, and it has to be approved for you to get the funds. And that is also limiting some youths. The youths in the rural areas who didn't have maybe the ability to go beyond high school or colleges. So that is still also a limitation to them.
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up to your question, you talked about funds for the youth that you can't just enter and get, free funds, which is very true. But I also think it's fair because the people who are giving their money, they would like to know where it's going. They can't just give it to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. So maybe instead of giving away the funds that way, maybe I mistook the in understanding that maybe it's to train these people to write proper proposals, or youth to sort of word their um, intentions in the right way so that they can secure these funds possibly. Yes. I can see a few comments in the section from Nina. The government has the responsibility to incorporate the youth in decision making, design and implementation of projects, and acknowledge our contribution to civic activities, and avail opportunities to motivate the youth to be a part of political activities. And then Diana says the responsibilities to develop and maintain infrastructure and services, promote and expand existing businesses, address inefficiencies in the local economy, promote human capital development to help vulnerable groups, especially to participate in the labor market of the private sector. Yes, thank you for that. Otieno says to Edmund, there's an attempt through an entire section on youth patriotism and volunteerism, which is volunteering framework, sensitization on value of patriotism and volunteerism, mainstream youth volunteerism, and even recognition of champions. For volunteering, maybe set it up as a competition. People gain points for the period they were volunteering. We had an interesting idea in Machacos with Frasha. With this, we can pick this up for exploration. Yes, Edmund, that's an interesting point that you bring up, a way of sort of marketing this as gaining points for volunteering. And what do you suggest would be the end goal? What would the winner, since it's a competition, get from this? It's something interesting to look into. 15,000 for interns. What do you guys think of this? An interesting question. So let's start with Edmonds to Mr. Wainaina, where he says that for volunteering, maybe set it up as a competition where people gain points for the period that they have volunteered. Would you have anything to add on that, Mr. Wainaina?
Not really. I think as I said, we are just looking for proposals on how we can actualize that specific area on youth and volunteerism, and I think that's a good idea that Edmond has proposed. Yeah. So probably as you had also asked him is of course I think the awards and how that will go. Probably we can have an engagement later on, maybe, and here the example from Machakos. I think he mentioned Machakos. So it will be something that we will want to probably hear more about and see how we can also incorporate it within our policy framework. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for that comment. So we'd be happy to explore that further. A proposal for county to pay 15,000 for interns. What do you guys think of this? Harrison, I can see your hand up. Would you like to comment?
It was on the first point. Because even I remember there's a group I used to go as a member. People are complaining even about volunteerism because we are in a large number. We used to come as a community to help clean the environment, where people used to contribute. There were young people to contribute. So some people, they are coming with the idea, maybe something they could appreciate, like giving out certificates. And so people are saying maybe they wanted something for a long-term run. I just wanted to mention that point. Maybe it can help.
Yes, that's it does definitely. Thank you so much for that. the idea of maybe further volunteering experience or other things that may be helpful in the long run. Thank you for that. Yeah. A comment from Martin that says youth should be innovative for them to fit in the market. They need to innovate ways on how they can be independent and earning for them. The government should create a ground where all people can access services equally. It should also relook also into terms and conditions laid down when youth are seeking for financial support to fund their ideas. Yes, thank you for that, Martin. Do we have any other comments? All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for such an engaging discussion over these 4 priority areas that we had. It's been very fruitful, and I think it's going to be very useful for the policy development process. Moving on, we would like to ask you for any feedback that you have for us on this session, and also any questions that you might have that you would like to address to either Mr. Wainaina or just in general. Please let us know if you have any feedback or any questions that you would like to share with us. Yes, Mr. Wainaina, please let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah, thank you, Malika, and I think I also want to thank the participants who have shared their feedback, including the ones on the chat, and there are just probably a few areas that we still might need feedback from the participants. Where in the priority areas that we have in the policy, we also had identified something on issues of crime and security and peace building and radicalization, and we will also probably be asking for feedback on also that specific area. Then also in issues of drugs and substance abuse, I think it's a major issue that affects young people. And we will actually want to hear from them. Those like Edmond, I think it's Edmond or somebody mentioned about the specific interventions that we will want to see done by the county and probably other actors. Then I think we also had issues of environment and sustainable development. They're quite, if I think for those who live in Nairobi, you'll see a lot of the waste that household waste that comes from our homes. Most of them are taken up by youth groups, youth in self-help groups, and we're looking at also that area because it's something that a lot of young people are involved in. And also the issue of youth and ICT. I think that's something that is really relevant to young people, and what would they want done by the county government and other stakeholders on those specific issues. So for me, probably before we end, that's feedback that we will also want to get from the participants. And it will be helpful if you can get probably specific recommendations on those areas that I have mentioned. Thank you, Malika.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Wainaina. Would anyone have anything to comment on what he just said? I can say that I can see that there's other questions. To answer your question, Edmund, for what is next after this discussion regarding the ideas that I've shared. Well, as the next step, we will have all these inputs and perspectives shared through a guideline template, which we will share with the county and they will add these ideas and review them in the policy. And yes, to just echo Mr. Wainaina's question on these specific issues such as climate change, ICT, waste management, environment, SDGs, would you have any specific feedback or any suggestions that you would like to give to those? and crime and drug abuse as well. So I can see some of the comments here that says, can government make it easy for youth to access funds? I had this idea of developing an app and that will enable Kenyans to rent houses and offices online. I went to Kenyan Investment Authority. They said my idea was good, but I should get loan rather than an investor. I went to youth office in my constituency. They demanded security for the loan, either title deed or car logbook, or I should be employed. I tried KYEOP and many others, but lol. Kindly, if you can raise this issue, you'll do Kenyan youths a favor. Sure, I think that's something we can look into. And on the issue of youth funds, can we please get to know where and how we as youth can get access to these funds? Yes, would you like to answer those questions, Mr. Wainaina, please?
Okay. So let me pick the last question first. As I had mentioned, this is so I think sometimes people get confused between what the national government is doing and what the county government is doing. For the funds, I think probably he was referring to the youth fund. So the youth fund, or probably even where's the fund. So those funds are managed by state agencies. So and that's a national government function. But I think I agree with those concerns. I think there has been challenge in terms of young people accessing these funds. But also there have been young people who have also benefited and have been able to access. So probably will be to because I know there was an idea, not necessarily even an idea. I think now there was a plan to transition, to merge the funds into one fund. So to merge the youth fund, the women fund, Uwezo fund into one fund known as Biashara fund, and probably it would be. And I think at some point they had even requested for inputs or views on that bill, and I think one of the challenges I think that has been mentioned is information. So if young people will be aware about some of these things that are happening, they can also share their feedback. But for the county government, we've also it's something interesting. There's a proposal to set up a fund within the county government. And I think one of the things that we will need before that has been actualized is to understand, take the lessons that have been learned from these different funds, and so that we avoid the mistakes probably that young people have gone through in terms of accessing the fund and even information about the funds. So I think that's my response for the last question. I think for the other question, which I believe was by I think, was it McDunn? I think the name was McDunn. And I think he mentioned about an app. He had an idea of developing an app, and he had approached, I think he mentions Kenya Investment Authority. And I think probably the challenge that I see is the linkage between in terms of these innovations that young people have, and probably is to see how can we link young people with innovations, with all these great ideas, with other partner organizations, or whether government or non-governmental, who can also try and assist them. Why I'm saying that is this policy will not address all the youth challenges or problems, but it is a first step in trying to actually identify them and prioritize those challenges, and so that now the government and other actors can also pick them up. So it will be, I don't want to say that whatever we are saying will be done, but I think the issue is that we will try and, as much as possible, to push the county to have them done, and not just us. I think even young people, we have the National Youth Council, which I believe represents young people in this country. So we are looking forward to also such organizations being at the forefront of championing some of the issues, the concerns, the challenges that young people are facing as they try to approach different opportunities that are being offered. So I think for me, that is the feedback I can share for now, Malika.
Yes, thank you so much. There's two suggestions, I think, in the chat that maybe we could look into as well. It says the policy should intend to create a county youth fund, and also the county government should increase more activities for community-based organizations around Nairobi. Having youths engaged will help in reduction of crimes, early pregnancies, and many more setbacks which youth encounter while living in Nairobi. So those are two suggestions that we could take a look into, I think. Is there any other questions to Mr. Wainaina that anyone would like to ask, or just any general feedback on these specific issues such as crime, drug abuse, just early pregnancies, etc., and environmental preservation, of course. All right. If there's nothing else, then I would just like to ask maybe the county representative to give your final remarks before we close off the session. Thank you. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so thank you, Malika and Youth Café for organizing this session. I also want to thank the participants who joined us for this virtual session. Just for creating time, even just to share their input from the chat and even the feedback they've given us. I want to encourage them. We still getting input, so I think if somebody feels probably is something which probably is really important that was left out, I think that still can be shared. We can share our emails. They can reach out to Youth Café, and I think that feedback can come back to us. I think for us, the next process is, as I had mentioned, these forums are currently ongoing, and we are, as I said, we have the physical and the virtual. So some of the feedback we are getting, we've already probably got similar feedback, but I think we're also getting very good ideas on how some of those areas can be implemented. So we look forward in the next 1 week or so. So we are hoping in the next 1 week, it's when we will be wrapping up these forums targeting young people. Then we'll now engage other actors, especially youth serving organizations, and even government organizations, so that they can also give us their input on the policy. And we want to share the feedback that we have got from young people in terms of what they feel is a responsibility or the rights for government and private sector. And when I say private sector, I think I also include civil society there. So I think for us, we are really grateful, and we look forward to more engagement, and specifically even in terms of once we are done, we are hoping that people will still be interested in ensuring that the policy will be implemented, because I think it's one thing to develop a policy, but then it's something else to implement the policy. So thank you once again, Malika.
Thank you so much for those final remarks. And from our side at the Youth Café, we would just like to express our gratitude and thank you all again for your invaluable support and your contribution, and such an engaging discussion that we had today throughout this session. And we look forward to working with you in the future and to hear more ideas and innovative ideas from you all, just so we can translate these words into action and build a more diverse Africa, or Kenya or Nairobi to start with. Let's start at this level, and we look forward to hearing more from you all.